This is Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists, brought to you by Dunlop Motorcycle Tires and the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Welcome to episode 36 of Chasing the Horizon, released on the 29th of October, 2018. I'm your host, Wes Fleming, and you're about to hear what went on at AIMExpo this year in Las Vegas. I am doing something a little bit different for this episode of Chasing the Horizon, effectively adding a couple of co-hosts to the show for the episode. So I wanted to welcome Scott Correy and Liz Howe. Say hi, guys.
Hi. Hi there.
Hopefully you can tell by their different voices which one is Scott and which one is Liz, but it'll come up over the time. But because the show is the show, we're going to talk a little bit about some industry news first. I want to talk about two things. One that Scott has already told me he can probably speak very well to, and of one that might be a little less in his area of expertise, but as a motorcycle rider and somebody who pays attention to the industry, I think he's probably well suited to talk about it, even if he doesn't know he is. So the first thing I want to talk about is Alta Motors, not so much closing down. They didn't say we closed. They said we're ceasing operations, which from a business standpoint is a different thing than closing. But I know only what I've read about Alta, and their recent partnership with Harley-Davidson fell apart after only 6 months without any explanation really from either side. And my thinking is that Harley pulling out of that partnership may have had something major to do with Alta's cessation of operations, just because, you know, Harley has a lot of money and Alta doesn't. Scott, what's your perspective on that?
Well, to me, when I first heard about it, it almost had a little bit of the same vibe as Hero investing in EBR and then pulling out, whereas that was the only thing keeping him afloat towards the end.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking it was the same thing, that, you know, it was going to keep them going for a while, and so they kind of settled back into production. That was around the same time they lowered prices and all the rest of that. And then, I think as soon as Harley pulled out, that was it for them. And I'm kind of concerned now that even though they're not closed, they're seeking investors or backing, that they kind of have that taint. You know, it's a risk now more so than it was before.
Yeah, it's like selling a house to somebody who just came out of bankruptcy.
Right.
But because I know they're out of San Francisco, I've never seen an Alta motorcycle. Have you seen anybody riding one, or any kind of, do they have dealerships? Do you know? That sounds like a dumb question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. I haven't seen one like on the streets. They had a presence at the One Show here in Portland this year, and they filmed some videos here locally, actually.
Oh, okay.
So there is a bit of a Portland connection with them. But yeah, I'm not sure who their dealers really are, if they're being carried through other, like, mainly off-road dealers or what. Hopefully
they'll pick things back up and get going again. I know their niche was kind of being off-road bikes, and not dual sports necessarily, but like real off-road bikes, you know. They ran in the Ertzberg Rodeo this year and actually finished it with an electric, which was pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. Do you guys see a lot of electric bikes out there? I mean, Portland, I assume that every other motorcycle rider in Portland drinks craft beer, has a beard, and rides an electric motorcycle with a bicycle helmet perched on top of his man bun. So since neither of you fits that obvious gross and offensive stereotype, that must be your neighbors that are those people.
Yeah, we might be the exception that makes the rule, or whatever the saying is.
Totally.
So the other big electric motorcycle is Zero. Do you guys see a lot of those around town?
We do, actually. I mean, not as many as we see, gas bikes, obviously, but we actually had a Zero dealer just down the block from us for a while, so we see them pretty regularly.
Okay. Well, hopefully Alta will make their comeback Another motorcycle manufacturer out of Alabama called Modus closed down, ceased business operations not too terribly long ago, right at the end of August. Yeah, it was the end of August. So that's, kind of two niche motorcycle makers that have gone down, when for better or for worse, the economy seems to be going up, but I don't pretend to understand business, so who knows? Now, speaking of not understanding business, the other thing I wanted to talk about from a news standpoint is the Harley-Davidson news that, well, actually two things now that have come out in the last few days. The first news was that their U.S. sales dropped 13% last quarter. So the third quarter runs from 3 months, including September. So that would be September and what's before September, August, and then July. So July, August, and September. Sorry, I had to count backwards. So in that sales quarter, their sales in the U.S. dropped 13%, which is the biggest drop that they've had since the bottom fell out of the entire economy, basically. I think they have to go back 8 years to get a drop in the U.S. that's as big as 13%. They did a little bit better overseas, but not hugely so. Their sales weren't up for sure. But the interesting thing about it is that even though their sales dropped significantly, double digits, their revenue didn't drop a lot. The revenue actually went up, and so did their share price. So from an industry standpoint, this is a really curious thing because their stock is down 24% through last week. I think the beginning of last week, their stock was down 24% this year, but it actually rose almost 2% on the news that their sales went down, but their revenue went up. So I did a little bit of digging around, and it looks to me like, and once again, not being a huge industry expert, it looks to me like what happened was they sold a lot more of their high-end motorcycles, so they were able to make more money on fewer sales, if that makes sense. Which I think is a really interesting thing. And then the day after that, they announced a recall of something like 250,000 motorcycles, recent motorcycles, 17 and 18 models, for hydraulic clutch problems. Not a huge amount of detail on that. And of course, Harley still dominates the American market. They're over 50% market share. Not hugely over. They're at 50.9. But they're also climbing in Europe, which is where bikes like Triumph and BMW and Ducati and KTM, that's their stomping ground. And in Europe, Harley's market share is up to just over 10%. So now they've got a huge drop in U.S. sales, and they've got their second recall of this year. So, and like I said, when we were talking about this over email, I didn't really expect you to have a super deep perspective on this, but I'm just curious where you think that, what do you think that bodes for the motorcycle industry in general?
I'm not sure if it bodes negatively for the motorcycle industry in general, or if it's just more of a Harley issue right now. I think about a lot of folks I know who ride Harleys, buy one bike and then just ride it forever. They're not repeat buyers for the most part. We've got a neighbor who's had the same bike forever and just rides it occasionally. So I'm not sure. It's really hard to say. I think, Indian's doing well.
Yeah.
And
yes, they are.
And they're not having issues. So I kind of wonder if some of this is just there's not demand for Harley's product except for at the higher end,
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it, and a perspective I hadn't thought of. So I'm glad that I asked you that question.
They do sell a lot of Sportsters and stuff still, but there's not a lot of money in those for them, I think. Yeah,
and I think is typical with the most manufacturers, the less expensive, the lower the retail price on the bike, the lower the margin is for the manufacturer. So cheap bikes make them less money, but they're, that's how they get you.
It's the gateway drug.
Exactly. It's the gateway drug. So, things like, BMW's new G310 series that cost like $5,000, they're not making 10, 15, 20% on those bikes, but their high end stuff, the CVOs, the super custom out of the factory bikes, they might be making, 15% profit on those bikes, and that carries them.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. So I think that's we got a lot more to talk about, but so that's going to do it for the news this time around. As usual, there'll be links to those articles in the show notes. But right now, we're going to take a quick break for the MOA spot to plug the MOA's benefits. So we'll be right back after that. Every time I do this segment, I tell you I'm not going to tell you about the MOA's roadside assistance program. But this time, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you about. The main reason is because I had to use it about a week ago, and I was glad I had access to a quick and easy solution to get my bike towed. One morning when I went out to take my sidecar rig for a spin, I discovered the front brake wasn't functioning. A quick look and I figured out my front brake master cylinder had failed and leaked out all the fluid. A 900-pound monster sidecar rig like this needs those front brakes, so I was stuck. I'll call roadside assistance, I told myself, and everything will be all right. 2 hours later, my rig was on a flatbed tow truck properly secured by the driver who knew how to handle motorcycles, and 2 hours after that, it was at the repair shop of my choice, 84 miles away. The service call cost me nothing but the tip I gave the driver. The great thing about the MOA's roadside assistance program is that it's open to non-members. For $69 a year, you can take advantage of our group rates and get the basic plan. Designed for motorcyclists, the basic roadside assistance plan cannot be beat. Enjoy 100 miles of free towing, free fluid service, free battery service, and free flat service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also spend $109 and get basic roadside plus a 1-year MOA membership, saving $9 off the combined cost of the two. For more information, check out the website at bmwmoa.org/roadside. You can also email membership at bmwmoa.org or call the main office at 864-438-0962. Now that we're back from the MOA spot, and I hope that whatever I decided to put in there was interesting enough for you to listen to and not just skip forward like this is on a DVR or something. This is what I brought Scott and Liz on to talk about. I want to talk about the AIMExpo, which is the big motorcycle, I guess, even though it has motorcycle in the name, they call it a power sports trade show. There were side-by-sides and there were even some boats there this year, which I've seen before in the past. And oddly enough, there were some they're not cars. I guess they call them autocycles. And Liz, I remember you talking about trying to get a ride in one of those. Did you ever make it?
I did not make it, and I'm a little... Oh, wait, was it the Slingshot or the Vanderhall?
Yeah, they're both autocycles, so either one.
So I did get a ride in the Slingshot doing the drifting course, and I will probably never get an autocycle, but that was just a hoot. It was so much fun. Oh my gosh. Just getting driven around by a professional race driver, spinning around in circles. It was great. I loved it. But I really did want to get behind the wheel of the Vanderhall, which is more like a Morgan three-wheeler styled kind of autocycle. And the line was just so long. I get impatient. And so I just said, no, I can't deal with this line. So I'm pretty bummed I missed that. So maybe in a future year they'll come back and I'll get a better place in the line. So
were they making people wait in the line, or could you like sign up and leave and come back when it was your turn?
You had to wait in the line, then you had to sign up, and then you waited some more, and then you watched a really long, this is how you drive one of these vehicles video, and then you waited for the vehicles to come back, and so it just seemed like a lot of waiting, and there was a lot to do at AIMExpo.
Yeah,
so.
We made a bit of a tactical error and went to try the Vanderhall on one of the consumer days, and we should have done it on the media day. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I talked to several other media folks several other folks that were there on the media days. And, one of them, he said, yeah, I never had to wait for a test ride. I went from truck to truck and rode any bike I wanted to. He went on Thursday when all of us were all excited to go in and walk around the floor and talk to everybody. And of course, Kawasaki had their new product unveiling first thing 10 o'clock Thursday morning. I think it was 10 o'clock Thursday morning. And whether it was 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, it was the first thing that was happening. So everybody mobbed Kawasaki's booth for their unveiling. And had you guys come? Were you there on Thursday, or did you get there on Friday?
We got there on Friday. We were there first thing Friday morning. Okay,
so I'll talk a little bit about what I saw there, because it kind of gives me a little segue into talking about the motorcycles, which is one of the words. The M in AIMExpo stands for motorcycle. So Kawasaki debuted a number of different motorcycles, all of which were interesting and all of which were beautiful in that sport bikey Kawasaki kind of way. But the one that I was really excited about was they're not calling it the 636. That's the new Ninja in the 600cc segment. And now, of course, the name is escaping me, ZX6R, or however they name those things. ZX6R is what I think it is. But it's got a 636cc engine, which is a little bit bigger than, some of the other 600cc segment bikes. But the thing that really impressed me was the amount of technology that they've packed into it. It looks like a Ninja, and I sat on it and it feels like a Ninja, which for somebody my size is uncomfortable. But for the sport bike market, I think it's going to be one of those things that gets the other manufacturers paying attention to that segment. The super sport segment has really kind of gone stagnant in the last 4 or 5 years. You don't really hear too much about new stuff in that arena. So seeing that Kawasaki was not just paying attention, but they came out, they brought Jason Britton out, really famous stunt rider. He hung around and took pictures with everybody. And he did a really cool thing where he just kind of put the 636 on his hip and spun it on the kickstand so everybody could get good pictures of it, which, got a lot of attention. So much so that I kind of forgot about the other bikes that they had brought out, which was, a Hyper Sport Tourer over leader bike. Did you ever make it to the Kawasaki booth and look around?
We did. I checked out. I was especially interested in their the retros, the RS.
Sure.
But the 600 I'm kind of surprised by as well, just because it felt like the 600 class as a whole was dying.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the 750s were a huge thing through the 90s, and that kind of died out. And it's weird that it's making a comeback, and I do wonder if other manufacturers are going to follow suit or not.
Yeah, the other group that I paid attention to that was kind of doing something with sport bikes was Yamaha. Mm-hmm. So I'll move on to them in a second, but I want to stay on Kawasaki. So what else did you notice about the retros? Because I actually didn't pay attention to the retro bikes at all. I skipped completely over them because retro bikes aren't really something that hits my radar too hard.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get any seat time on any of them, but just the build quality and stuff. It feels like Kawasaki is really stepping it up. Just like the details and everything were really impressive. They look pretty nice. I have a feeling that most of those are going to be just 1 or 2 year models, though. I don't think they're going to be around real long.
Yeah, that would kind of be a shame to a certain extent. But, a lot of bikes, I think a lot of times the manufacturers are trying to get you on one to build that brand loyalty, especially in the United States where, like you're talking about your neighbor that bought one Harley and he's going to ride it forever.
Yeah.
If something were to happen to that bike, he would probably go buy another Harley.
Yeah.
So that brand loyalty is, I think, something that they really look for, especially in the United States where, we tend to pick our thing and stick to that, even if it's a problem.
Right.
I know people that won't drive across town to Target because they've always gone to Walmart, but Walmart's business practices make them angry, but they've always gone to Walmart, so they keep going to Walmart. So,
right.
If you can get on a retro, even if it only lasts for a year or two, then your next bike might be another Kawasaki, a touring model, a cruiser, a sport bike, whatever. Plus, there's also on a bike that only lasts for a couple years, there's both a little bit of shame and a little bit of pride, right? You've got kind of a unique bike, but then you kind of also got a bike that didn't succeed. So, how that works out for you kind of depends on your own mindset with your motorcycle.
Right. Or like the Ducati Sport Classic, it becomes a cult bike and ends up selling for a fortune on eBay later. They couldn't move off the showroom floor. So
Exactly. That's kind of how I feel about my Honda Element, my 4-wheel vehicle. Not real popular, but everybody says they love them.
Oh, they're hugely popular here in Portland. So,
I'm not gonna move to Portland to check them out. I've been in Portland once. I got nothing negative to say about it. So I wasn't there very long, just long enough to find a way to ship my broken bike home and catch a train back to the East Coast. But that's a story for another time. So actually, I mentioned Yamaha when I was talking about Kawasaki, and I've actually got a clip from a couple of guys at the Yamaha booth. So I'm going to drop that in right now, and we'll come back and talk about that clip in a second. So I'm over here at the Yamaha booth at AIMExpo, and I'm with a couple of guys from Yamaha. If you guys would introduce yourselves real quick.
Sure, my name is Marcus DeMichael. I'm our Street Motorcycle Media Relations Manager.
Do you have to write that on all your correspondence?
That's a long title, yes.
And hi, I'm Aaron Bast, and I work in the Motorcycle Product Planning Department.
Great. So I wanted to come over and talk to these guys about a bike that I think serves an underappreciated market, which is the small displacement sport bike. And you guys have made a bunch of changes to the YZF R3 for the upcoming model year. So I just wondered if you could break that down a little bit for me and hit some of the highlights, what people can expect. In the presentation you did a little while ago, you showed what was just kind of upgraded, but you also showed what was new. So if you could hit that again for me, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, so to begin with, the two main things that we changed, we improved function, but then we also improved the design. We updated the design. So starting with the improved function, this bike is more aerodynamic than the previous model. So it's 7% improved in terms of CDA, so coefficient of drag. So 7% improvement in aerodynamics. A big technical change is the addition of a new KYB upside down front fork.
Right.
So that's a big change. To complement that fork, we also have a new top triple clamp, a new bottom triple clamp, and then the axle brackets at the bottom. Those are new as well.
So just that one seemingly simple change of putting an upside down fork on it means you have to adjust all these other components.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you could say that new fork, new triple clamps. In addition to that, we changed the riding position. So we changed the handlebars and the fuel tank. So the clip-on handlebars are now 22 millimeters lower.
Okay.
And then the fuel tank is changed. The top of the fuel tank is 20 millimeters lower. And then the fuel tank is over 31 millimeters wider, just above the rider's knees. And what this is going to do, the riding position is going to be a bit more sporty for the 19 model year. But the biggest benefit with that change to the fuel tank, now the rider can grip the bike with their knees better now that it's taller above the rider's knees. So
right.
Aggressive cornering going through different riding positions, you can really hook your knee up in there and grab the bike better. In addition to the new riding position, we have new Dunlop tires. So we have Dunlop GPR 300 radial tires.
And I do want to say Dunlop sponsors my show, so I was excited to see that you guys went Dunlop on the OEM for this. That was really cool.
Right, and then to cap that off too, we also have a new LCD meter for the rider as well too. So,
which do you feel like people are coming to expect that level of dash improvement?
The meter is becoming more and more important as we move along. So that's one of the areas of the bike where the rider interacts with the motorcycle. That's where you're getting your information, and I think getting that element of the bike, that component, as high quality and as attractive as we can, that's becoming more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marcus, if you were going to tell somebody,
if you were going to sell me one of these bikes, now clearly my size, I am not the target demographic for this motorcycle. Who are you selling these bikes to, and how are you trying to, get them off of other brands and onto Yamaha?
Well, it's a motorcycle that anybody can ride. So it is what we consider more of an entry-level motorcycle. So it's got easy-to-use power, a nice lower seat height, very easy handling. So anyone that is looking to get into the sport, this is actually a great choice to start with. And at the same time, they're not going to outgrow it because it makes decent power that's very manageable there as well. Aside from that, the price point is great, $49.99. That's actually the same price point as what we had last year, even with all these changes.
That's pretty impressive that you can make all those upgrades, especially with the front-end suspension, and not raise the price.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's for our base model. We also offer it with ABS for $52.99, which was the same case as last year as well.
So that's math. $300 to get ABS.
Yes.
That's starting to get to the point where you could almost put ABS on everything and not really worry about the price increase too much. Is that something you guys talk about?
Yeah, that's actually a great question for Aaron on the product planning side. I know that is something that they do definitely look at regularly and try to find what makes the most sense there too. But yeah, it'll be arriving at our dealerships in December.
In December, okay.
So customers will be
so if you want one, go to your dealer now and start talking about it.
Absolutely.
And get on the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I dig the matte black. It looks very spaceshipy. It's very sleek and very elegant. The white pops are nice because then you still got a little bit of visibility there. And of course, it says R3 nice and big. You got Yamaha in nice big letters. The tuning fork logo looks fantastic on that black tank. But yeah, I'm going to turn back over to Aaron and ask him the question again about the ABS. As we see, ABS used to be expensive. It was $1,000 option, or it added $1,000 to the price. So, and this may be a much more in-depth question than you can answer really standing on a showroom or a show floor. But how do you make the determination on that $300 difference about not just making it standard across the board?
Yeah, so I think that question does have a lot of elements to it, but I think ABS is becoming more of an expected feature on just motorcycles in general. But really, what drives it is the customer. We try to give the customer what they want. With other segments, with other products, I think ABS is becoming more of a standard feature. But when it comes to super sport, when it comes to sport bikes, there actually are riders that would prefer not to have ABS.
Right.
So that's why we pushed, and we do have two different specs, an ABS and a non-spec model. And when it comes to pricing, it's a complicated answer in terms of there's different types of ABS in terms of components and different, there's just different types of ABS on different types of motorcycles. So,
do you know off the top of your head what the weight difference is between the ABS and non-ABS versions?
Yeah, so the ABS model is going to have a wet weight of 375 pounds, and then the non-ABS will have a wet weight of 368. So that's 7 pounds. 7 pounds.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and when you consider the hydraulic unit, the extra lines that are required, there's sensors, there's you can see the wires on the front and rear wheels. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's just only 7 pounds to get that.
7 pounds, $300 to get ABS on a. Now, are these considered middleweight? No,
this would be an entry. We call this an entry-level super sport motorcycle.
Lightweight has a negative connotation, so we use entry-level across the industry. That's a very typical thing that we do.
Yeah.
All right, well, awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time, guys. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Sure thing. You too. Thanks.
Very welcome. Thank you.
That was two marketing guys from Yamaha. So obviously, they work for Yamaha. They were wearing really nice blue Yamaha shirts. They're obviously going to be really excited about their company's product. But with the R3, the things that I thought were really cool about it were that, they call them entry-level bikes instead of lightweight bikes. The 600s, we call them middleweight motorcycles, 500 to 800 cc, we call them middleweights. Over that, we call them, leader bikes or heavyweights. But nobody says lightweight motorcycle. They say entry level, because they kind of aim those at people that are getting into motorcycling for the first time, or young riders that might not have a lot of money, or people that aren't as they maybe not, they're not committed to the sport bike lifestyle yet, so they'll buy an inexpensive one. But the thing that impressed me about the R3 was that not only did they take a lot of styling cues from the R1, which is kind of arguably their premier sport bike that they're pushing. They took a lot of styling cues from it. The front, looking at it, the R3 head on is not a whole lot different than looking at an R1. It's a beautiful motorcycle, no doubt about that. But the technology has come down too. They've got inverted upside down forks. They've put a lot of that kind of high end technology into this bike that only costs about $5,000. So I am curious what your take on, not necessarily the R3, because I don't know if you saw it, but that kind of entry level market as far as it applied at AIM. What did you see in that market around the floor?
I actually saw quite a few bikes that were kind of in that range. What surprised me was the amount coming out of Asia. Brands like Lifang and stuff that were there were so many of them. It was crazy. When it comes to like the R3 specifically, I kind of hate the whole entry level thing, because even though it's a good bike for beginners, it seems like a lot of people who aren't beginners are still buying them.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree on that. And I'm a self-confessed smaller bike lover. My biggest bike is an 800, and I'm perfectly content to never cross over into the leader bike threshold. I like the little bikes. You can have a lot of fun really pushing them to their limit.
It's more fun to ride a small bike fast than a big bike slow.
Exactly. So I think, I would love to see a shift on the semantics.
But I see lots of 390 Dukes around Portland, and most of the folks I see riding those are experienced riders. They're not beginners or entry level. So yeah, could be just kind of more urban market too. I don't know, but
well, I definitely think that a bike with a smaller footprint, is that a nicer way to say it?
Yeah.
I think those bikes really do well in an urban environment because they're, it's not as ponderous to go. Sometimes you get all the red lights.
Yeah.
And if you've got an 1800cc full dress Harley-Davidson and all you're doing is potatoing from light to light to get to work, that's a lot to hold up. But something like a 390 Duke or an R3, even if you're into the sportier look, they do that. And the one that I saw, the manufacturer that I saw that really impressed me with their styling and the kind of the depth of their offerings was SSR. Did you? Did you stop by their booth?
I did. I was checking out the Benellis.
Oh, right, of course.
Under SSR, but I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and I think the quality and stuff is up there with a lot of other makers now.
Yeah, and that's been my complaint the last, I'd say, SSR hit my radar definitely last year, but I think I paid attention to them. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, of course, but I think I paid attention to them the year before in Orlando. And the one thing that I remember from that first run of bikes is that the Benellis were very nice. No two ways about that. The Benellis were nice, but their SSR branded bikes were cheap and plasticky looking. And this year they seem to have gotten a lot more metal on them. There's metal tanks on more of the bikes. They've got more bikes that don't have full fairings, so that you can actually see the motorcycle looking bits of the motorcycle. And I got to agree with you on that the look of them, the quality of the look has come way up. And I think that's going to... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I can't read the exact model, but they make a little almost Goodsey-esque retro that looked really nice.
Yeah.
And that's the one that stands out to me.
Talk about that a little bit while I try to look it up on the internet.
Just the the build quality amongst other things. I mean, it really looked like almost like an old Honda or something.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about the Buccaneer.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
I think the Buccaneer's a little V-twin.
Yeah. It's a 250cc V-twin. What a fantastic looking motorcycle. I'm looking at their website right now. and they got two versions, a Buccaneer Classic and a Buccaneer Cafe. And the Buccaneer Cafe is the more expensive of the two, and it's $3,600.
I'm just fascinated by the tiny V twin in it. So
yeah, and I don't know if you pay attention to YouTube at all, or the people that have videos about motorcycles. There's a guy called Shade Tree Surgeon, and he rode one of those. And his video of him on that bike, well, first of all, it looks just like every other video he's made of riding motorcycles. You can't tell he's on a really inexpensive 250cc, Chinese motorcycle, except he mentions it.
Right.
But he loved it. He had a great time riding that little bike, and it was good looking. He might have been on a classic, but it's the same engine. And they're sharp looking bikes, and they've got off-road bikes, they've got dual sports, they got scooters, they've even got electric vehicles. Only one of them's a motorcycle, and it looks like a little kid dirt bike. I guess they call it a pit bike, but it's a $700 pit bike, and it's electric. So, what's the harm? I get one of those just to go to the other end of my neighborhood for fun.
Oh yeah,
right.
And I think these Chinese builders, if they keep upping their quality, I think they're going to start to suck market share away from some of the bigger brands that don't have less expensive motorcycles.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder too with Zero and the electric makers how they're going to compete, because I have a feeling that at next year's AIMExpo we're going to see a lot more electrics coming from overseas. Yeah,
I absolutely agree, and I don't know if you noticed, but Zero was not at AIMExpo.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I thought, since they're kind of a West Coast company, I more or less expected them to be there at the one that's close to them, and they didn't show up.
Yeah, and I thought they were at the one in Cleveland last year.
So, yeah, I think they showed up at one or two of the IMS dates.
Maybe that was IMS.
Yeah. And that one definitely hits Cleveland, which I have enough trouble going to Columbus in Ohio.
Columbus.
I'm definitely not going to Cleveland. Sorry, I don't mean to slam Cleveland or Columbus. I have family in Columbus, and they're nice people, but I don't go visit them that often. But anyways, so from that standpoint, the SSR kind of being the Chinese builder that pops out in my mind, did you see much of the other foreign builders that were there, whether they make motorcycles or not? There are a lot of parts manufacturers, gear manufacturers there from overseas. Did you cruise any of their booths?
I kind of just wandered through that end, but so much of it was just parts, like actual hard part, engine part stuff that I didn't get too far into it. It seemed like there was a whole section just devoted to that, though, geared towards manufacturing.
Yeah, and I saw that too. And I got to say, maybe next year I'm going to pay a little closer attention to them because I didn't really. I don't want to say I don't care, but I don't build motorcycles, so I don't need wheel blanks and I don't need exhaust pipe that isn't bent yet. So I didn't really. They don't hit my radar too much, but I'm thinking, maybe I need to pay attention to them next year, excuse me, because I can't pay attention to anything last year. So that's a really interesting thing. So out of all the other, I'm trying to stave off what I think everybody that's listening to this episode knows is coming by getting you guys to talk about motorcycles. What other motorcycles did you see at the show that you were impressed by or excited about or just interested in?
Well, you see, I'm trying to also avoid the one that I'm probably most excited about, as you were, and I think we're both there at the event.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the Kawasaki H2 SE.
No, it wasn't. So, well, maybe Liz saw some other motorcycles that she would like to talk about before we delve into that.
Oh gosh. I'm trying to remember what all I sat on.
Where's the Leaf Fan?
I sat on, there was a little Leaf Fan. I want to say it was, oh gosh, it was the little retro one. It was light blue. I can't remember what it was called now off the top of my head. But it was super cute. Again, in that small lightweight motorcycle category. It's the KPM 200. There we go. Okay. The KPM. I put some. I sat on it. It was surprisingly comfortable. I'm fairly tall for a person of the female side of things, and it was actually pretty comfortable. I would not be ashamed to hoon around in my neighborhood riding around on one of those or commute to work on it. I think it would be a lot of fun. There was also, I usually don't sit on bobbers or cruisers, but I did sit on the Triumph bobber, and it was such a different seating position for me compared to what I usually am riding.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cush. I kind of want to test ride one, but I kind of don't, because that usually gets me in trouble, meaning that a bike somehow puts itself in my garage. But it was a really surprisingly comfy bike.
Yeah, that Triumph Bob is funny just because, and this is the case for me as well. I hear a lot of people say I'm not into cruisers, but and then they go on and start talking about the Triumph Bobber. So it has a certain appeal, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a bike that delivers a visceral reaction. That I don't know how I feel about the bobber styling. I think I think any bike, I like all bikes, right. And I'm not really a cruiser person either. I don't want my feet out in front of me. But I don't know. It's something about the back end of the bobber part of the bobber doesn't appeal to me hugely, but I saw the Triumph bobber, like comparing the Triumph bobber to the Indian Scout bobber, I would probably go for the Triumph first.
Really?
Yeah, because it kind of has that mix of Triumph and bobber, where the Scout bobber just looks like a bobber. It's a cruiser that's bobbed off in that style. And the Triumph is a little funkier. It's a little more avant-garde,
Yeah.
So I might go for that. But now, speaking of Triumph, and this has nothing to do with the show, except that they didn't bring one to the show, but did you see that they released the first look at the new Triumph Scrambler? I
did.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is going to be a real problem. I'm trying to not buy any new bikes for a while. What really gets me was I actually had a Triumph, the Scrambler 900. I had a 2007, and it looks like what they've built now was what I had hoped that would have been.
Right.
Like it was an okay bike. It was a little disappointing. I was living in Alaska at the time and wanted something a little more dual sport oriented. And it seems like years later now they finally came out with what I really wanted.
Yeah, the new Triumph Triumph Scrambler definitely looks like a Scrambler and not just a Scrambler styled bike, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
So now that we've held it off as long as humanly possible, let's get into it. Let's talk about and in all seriousness, more people that I spoke to were excited about this motorcycle than any other bike. More people mentioned this motorcycle than any other motorcycle at the entire show in all 4 days, whether it was media people, industry people, or consumers. Even some dealers were talking about it, so there's that going on. Why don't you say it so I don't have to?
The Indian FTR 1200?
Absolutely. Now, good.
I thought you were going to throw me a curveball for a second and say like some Vespa or something. So.
The Nikan, perhaps?
Yeah, the Nikan.
No. Definitely the FTR 1200. And I didn't get in trouble, but I got shooed away because I was taking pictures of it on Wednesday before the show officially started. Not that there aren't pictures of it all over the internet, because they had that big release on the 1st of October. Not that I remember those details, but that is literally the motorcycle I was the most excited about to see. Now, there's a lot of that excitement was built into the fact that I had already ordered one. So I was already going to be excited about it. But what impressed me was seeing it in person. It's taller than I thought it was going to be, but it's not as tall as I was afraid it was going to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
And even for as tall as I am and as heavy as I am, it felt very comfortable just sitting on it. And now I can tell I'm probably going to have some work done to the seat, but that happens on all of my motorcycles, just because I am who I am. But ergonomically, it was very well sized, and I can't help but be excited about all the technology. And I did order an S model that has all the upgraded technology over the regular 1200. But everybody knows that I've been obsessing about this bike for months, maybe even longer. So instead of me talking about it, why don't you talk about it and tell me what you think about it so we can get a slightly different perspective?
Sure. I mean, right off, you mentioned that you're getting the S model. The thing I found interesting is looking at the base model, I'm not sure who's going to buy it. It seems like you would, maybe if you were a customizer or if you're expecting to dump a bunch of money into suspension upgrades and stuff, it just seems like the S is the one to get for what you're getting. And it's not a huge price difference, really.
No, it's only $2,000 different between, the base model and the non-race replica S models. And the $2,000 covers, you got the TFT, or the touchscreen dash. I don't know that it's TFT, but it's a touchscreen dash. The fully adjustable suspension, front and rear. It's got, they both have cruise control. They both have ABS, but the S model has upgraded ABS that works when it's leaned over. So it's whatever they call it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also got, the S model also has the traction control and they call it wheelie mitigation to help you keep the front wheel on the ground. But yeah, for $2,000, I got to agree with you. I don't know who's gonna, people like me that are buying one to ride. I think they're all going to buy S models.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
People that want a wheelie are going to buy the cheaper one.
That's right. That doesn't have the wheelie control on it.
Yeah, just because I'm thinking with the base model, you're gonna, if you want to upgrade the suspension, you're probably going to be $1,200 just into the rear shock.
Oh yeah,
and you still don't electronics and all the other goodies. So I just don't understand it. Also, I noticed that hardly anyone was looking at the base model either. So
yeah, most of the people I saw checking out the base model, they were doing so because people were sitting on all of the S models. They couldn't. And I was outside on Sunday morning talking to some folks around the demo trucks, and they had two of the FTR 1200s out by the Indian demo truck. They weren't letting anybody ride them. But at one point, one of the Indian employees got on it, started it up, and rode it very slowly through, the staging area to move it somewhere.
What a tease! Yeah,
I know, right? And he went right past me, and I was so stunned that I forgot to pull my phone up and take a picture. I had my phone in my hand and didn't take a picture. But it didn't sound. I mean, he was just kind of idling through the parking lot there, but it didn't sound whiny. It sounded kind of gruff and a little aggressive, which I found kind of heartening.
The
one styling cue that I'm not super excited about is the exhaust, or the end of the exhaust, the muffler. Really, it looks like it looks like they surprised it right there at the end, and it jumped. That is one seriously upswept exhaust. I hear that they're going to have other options available. You got to buy them separately, of course, but
right.
I know that the folks at Roland Sands Design are also involved in making parts for all sorts of motorcycles. They've made Indian parts before. So I know that Indian is not going to be the only company making aftermarket accessories for the FTR 1200. So I think you've got something with your idea that modders, customizers, builders are going to be going after the base model, where riders are going to be going after the S model.
Yeah. And to add on to that, I think, I believe I heard that both S&S and Akrapovic have exhausts coming out, and they're in development right now. So those should be out, I'm guessing, about the time the bike's actually released.
Well, hopefully they'll do that right. You don't want to let anybody else get too far ahead of you in that kind of industry.
Exactly.
And coming from a pretty deep BMW background, Akrapovic makes a lot of stuff that fits on BMW motorcycles.
Yeah.
Super high quality. You pay for it, but the stuff works out of the box. It fits perfectly. It sounds like you expect it to sound, which is, much more aggressive than stock exhausts. I think there's a lot of potential in there. And, obviously that's the bike that I was the most excited about. But seriously, no hyperbole. Most of the people that I talked to, when I said, what's the bike that you've seen that you're excited about? They were like, oh yeah, absolutely. The new Indian.
Yeah. I mean, and I just said just a few minutes ago, I'm not a leader bike kind of a gal. And I told Scott, I said, that's one that I would consider potentially. But then I followed that up saying, now if they could just release their flat track race bike in a street version at the 750, I'm in line. I'm putting money down like tomorrow.
Yeah. So that more kind of middleweight 750 cc range, if they did that, would appeal to you a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm just excited because I've never owned an American-made motorcycle, and there's never been one that has enticed me enough to spend money. This might do it.
And that's exactly what I said to the Indian guy. And, I should probably play the clip from the Indian guy, but I want to talk a little bit more. We'll play the clip up from the Indian guy and then move on to something else. So that's exactly what I said when somebody asked me, what's the appeal is, well, I've never owned a new motorcycle, let alone a new model. I've never owned an American-made motorcycle. And that's mostly because I'm not really into cruisers. They're just not what I want to ride all day, every day. And I don't even want to ride one around town. I don't know that the FTR 1200 is going to be a great bike for all day highway cruising. There's nowhere to put luggage. There's nowhere to strap your gear. So if you're not wearing it or carrying it on your back, you'll have to see what the aftermarket does. But I don't want to put a big extension on the back of that thing and hang saddlebags off of it. That'll just, that's not what that bike is meant for. That's kind of a day/weekend trip bike, banging around town.
Yeah.
I don't want to say being a hooligan, but, maybe getting into a little bit of trouble here and there.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I believe it only holds like 3.5 gallons of gas, which for me is about a gallon too low.
Yeah, definitely. The tank size, it puts a limit on it as a touring bike for sure. But one of the
seats, that balance.
Say that again, Liz. I think you cut out just a tiny bit.
The gas tank is under the seat, so
yes.
It's small, but it's got that perfect balance with the weight down low. I'm a sucker for a gas tank for the seat.
That's a really good point. Now,
yep.
you must ride a 700 or an 800 BMW.
I do, and a 650.
And a 650.
Older single cylinder 650.
Good for you. Yeah, and those all had those underseat tanks. The only other bike that I know off the top of my head that has an underseat tank is a VMAX. Which is not a middleweight bike at all. I don't know if you've ever ridden one of those, but they're scary.
They're really big. I think I've sat on one once, and it was just big, and that was that.
Yeah. I had a housemate that owned one, and he loved it, but he came home one day and he was like, this is now 20 years ago, and he spent $30 on gasoline for his VMAX in one day.
Oh,
You know, because he was out being a hooligan, running around with some of his buddies, and it wasn't maybe 2 months later that he sold it and got a bike that was a little less conducive to right wristitis, as I sometimes call it. So, anyways, let me play the clip from the guy that I talked with at the Indian booth, and then we'll move on to another topic. So, hang on just a second while we listen to AJ Smith from Indian.
At the Indian booth, Indian motorcycle booth, and they just had their media presentation for the FTR 1200 and 1200S, and I'm here with one of their. I already forgot your title.
Marketing manager.
Marketing manager, AJ Smith. How's it going, AJ? You enjoying the show so far?
Yeah, good. Super excited to be here and see all the people and show off the FTR 1200.
Well, it's a great bike. You know, people that listen to my show know that I'm excited. I've already ordered one, so
nice.
I'm all in. I'm very excited about the bike. But what I wanted to ask a couple of questions about your presentation was you seem to really be kind of trying to capitalize on the old adage of win on Sunday, sell on Monday. How much did the flat track dominance play into the overall development of even the idea of this bike?
I mean, it played an important factor, but honestly, we started the development of the FTR 1200S really before the FTR 750 had this much success. We thought we were going to do well, not as well as we have. Honestly, it's been a little bit of a surprise for us in a good way. But when we started the development of the 750, we just looked at the bike and knew, like, wow, we're onto something here. We think we could translate this to the street, and it's going to be something people want.
Awesome. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the thing that really catches my attention about it is, you know, I'm a longtime fan of Indian. I love that Polaris has come in and brought the brand back up to where I think it should be. But I'm not really into cruisers.
Sure.
So even though I really wanted to buy an Indian, I didn't know which one to get because I'm not really a cruiser guy. So when you guys announced this, I'm all over it. So did the idea of expanding past the cruiser market, certainly it was something that you had to take into account, but is that the segment that you're going for with the FTR?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning when Polaris acquired, they knew they had ambitions to be more than just cruisers. We knew that was a critical base to establish. And now that we feel we've built out that portfolio, now it's time to expand outside that. Like you said, we know there's people that love the brand but want something different than a cruiser. So that's part of the reason we're so excited about this bike. It's not only because it's an awesome bike to ride, but also it takes us out and we're able to reach new people with new kind of bikes and go to new segments. So it's something we hadn't planned all along. It just, takes a number of years to fulfill and get to where we're at today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, AJ.
Yeah, thanks.
We've been talking about motorcycles a good bit, so let's kind of switch gears to the other big aspect of AIMExpo, which is gear. There's people selling gear all over the place. Although I did notice this year their booths were a little smaller than I've seen in the past. So what gear did you see that you were excited about on the AIM floor?
Well, one thing, this was my first AIMExpo, was I was surprised that there wasn't a big presence from Arai or Shoei helmets.
Yeah, they both had booths and they've both had a big presence in Orlando and Columbus, and neither one of them was there this year.
Dealers had some of their stuff, but I didn't see an actual corporate booth.
Yeah, that was I noticed that right away too. The only I would call major helmet manufacturers that had booths there were Simpson. Had a pretty small booth, but they've always had a relatively small booth. They kind of tend to focus on, quality over quantity. They don't have too many different people staffing their booth, and they don't have a huge variety of motorcycle products, so they don't really need a big booth. But Bell was there, and Bell had a massive booth like they always do. Tons of people, lots of presents, lots of models. They were showing off all of their different stuff, but you really paid attention to the Bell folks, didn't you?
Yeah, and I was, one of the things that impressed me about them was they had new stuff across every line, whether it was like off-road, kind of retro-styled helmets, modular, sport touring, and track. They had a little bit of everything going on. We went over there and chatted with them for a while about their safety features, like the MIPS system, and how they're using different densities of foam to absorb impacts at different rates, which I found kind of fascinating. Most manufacturers are only using one type of foam.
Right.
And they're using, I believe, 3 different densities in some of their helmets.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And they had some cool cutaways and stuff so you could see how it all fit together and work. So that's pretty interesting.
So when it comes to helmets, what do you guys use? Are you 3/4? I mean, in Portland, you could be 3/4 bubble visor users.
Like hipsters.
And I kid, and I'm poking fun, playing on stereotypes. I'm just glad that people wear helmets. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But are you full face users? Are you flip front users? What do you guys wear?
We are. I wear a full face Arai, and
I do a full face Shoei GT Air.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the newer Shoeis.
It is. It's not so new anymore. I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary on that lid, so it's going to be replaced
retired.
here in the not distant future.
Yeah, they're updating it.
They're updating it to a GT Air 2, which is why I was really hoping that I would get to see it at AIMExpo, and I didn't. So I wanted to see it first.
Shoei missed their chance. If they'd known, you would have been there.
I know.
Yeah.
And we're not close friends or anything. I know one of the guys at Shoei, and I asked him about why they weren't coming, and he gave me kind of a reasonable explanation that, and I'm not picking on him, but it felt very party line, like almost like they made the decision not to go, and this is what we're going to tell people is the reason why we're not going. So I'm hoping that they come back in 2019. They come back to Columbus, but I guess we'll have to wait and see next year. Now I happen to know, Liz, that you were pretty interested in a different kind of helmet.
Yeah,
so I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was hoping I might get a chance to. So many years ago, before I ever swung a leg over a bike, I really liked the aesthetic of the '60s cafe racer, the little half-shell pudding bowl style helmet that DeVita was a huge manufacturer of. I think it was they manufacturing that, and I loved the aesthetic. Then I learned how to ride a motorcycle, and I realized very quickly that my looks aren't much, but it's all I've got. I'm going full face. And so that crushed my dream of having a DeVita helmet. Completely crushed it. And we were walking around AIMExpo, and I saw a DeVita booth. And at that DeVita booth, I saw a full face helmet. And I just went right over to that helmet and looked at it and started chatting with the folks at the DeVita booth. And they are relaunching in the U.S. Early 2019. I think the distributor is going to be Moto Amore.
Okay.
And their new full face lid is called the Cura, and it is DOT certified. It's ECE certified. It's got the cool retro styling, which I kind of dig, even though I do not have a retro bike. I tried it on, and that is probably going to be my new helmet. I'm probably going to pick up a Shoei for every day, but I think for summertime, having kind of a little fun helmet that I can wear around town. I think there are going to be 2 helmets in my life in 2019. I'm pretty excited about it.
And I'm looking at their website. I'm looking at the Moto Amore website, and they are definitely importers for the DeVita helmets, but they don't have a full face on their website yet.
That's what I noticed the other day when I was looking too, and I'm pretty sure that they said it's going to be early 2019 before they'd be able to get their hands on it. It's if you go to the DeVita UK website, I can't remember what the URL is off the top of my head, but the Cura is available now in the UK in a whole bunch of different color schemes and all sorts of cool stuff. So it's just a waiting game of when is it available in the US.
Yeah, and they do a weird thing with their helmets, and I'm curious if you found out. Well, I think it's a weird thing. It's very kind of classic, but their liners are leather. Not the foam. I mean, it's not like a leather football helmet. It's got real protective foam in it, but the liner itself is leather.
Yeah, and that's something I'm curious about.
Wondering about hot days with that thing on.
Wondering about hot days. I know when I pulled it on at AIMExpo, I kind of laughed after I said this, but the very first words out of my mouth were, "Oh my God, it smells so good in this helmet," because it has that fresh leather interior smell. It was beautiful. And it was so smooth. It didn't have any, pulling it on, there was none of that tugging or any of that. Sometimes you get that with some of the fuzzier liners. Yeah. They feel like they tug at your hair or your ears. It just slid on and it slid off. That is one of the things that I'm really curious to road test is how does it live up? What happens when it's hot? What happens if you have the face shield up and it's raining? Does it get all nasty and crunchy? I'm really, really curious about this because I've never had a leather-lined helmet, and yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Did it have a seam in there where your head is?
I didn't feel a seam. I flipped it over and looked at it, and inside, it's a fully removable, so you could probably do some Lexol treatment to clean it up.
Right.
But it's removable, and it didn't really have a different appearance other than the leather than any other removable helmet liner. I didn't feel any hard seams pressing anywhere on my head, which would have given me pause for concern. Usually I wear a little helmet liner, so I would have assumed that any seams would have been more noticeable without my helmet liner. Since I was trying it on, I didn't have a liner with me. So
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from a gear perspective, was there any other gear that you saw there that excited you, not necessarily to the level of the DaVita helmet, but that at least caught your eye, caught your interest?
Well, we did talk to Cardo.
Yeah, that was the other biggie for me.
Well, and that I'm glad you said that because it gives me a chance to play a clip from Dan from the Cardo booth. So let me throw that in here real quick, and then we'll talk about Cardo after that.
I'm at the Cardo booth. Cardo, as you know, is one of the major forces in motorcycle communications devices. I'm here with Dan, who is the VP of marketing for the whole company all over the world, which is kind of exciting. And I just wanted to ask Dan real quick to tell us a little bit about two things. First off, to start with, what's Cardo got going on that's new and exciting? And then also a little bit about the JBL partnership that you guys announced just before the show started.
Absolutely. Hi, Wes. Thanks for having me on your show. It is indeed exciting times. Last week in Germany, we've announced a partnership that we believe will change the way motorcyclists perceive audio and enjoy high-quality audio, because when we talked with motorcyclists all around the world, that's what we do when we think about new product releases. And we asked them, how can we do better? They basically said three things. We want performance, intercom performance to be better, easier to pair up. We want usability to be more intuitive and easy. And we want, great sound experience. We're passionate about bikes. We're passionate about our music. And we went back to our labs, and a few years later, we came up with dynamic mesh communication, being a huge hit. Pack Talks since we announced them in late 2014. Then last year we came with natural voice operation, a Siri Alexa-like way to activate your units.
Yeah, I just tested that out with Hey Cardo, and it works fantastic.
It's amazing. We have people coming to us and saying, "Hey, I rode 90 miles. I haven't touched a button. I kept my hands on the bar, just telling it what to do, and it did it." And that's when once you tried it. It's you cannot go back.
Right.
You cannot go back to pressing buttons. And the third challenge, now this one, as soon as we understood that audio is key, and there should be no reason whatsoever why every high-end car brand has premium audio systems, but motorcycle don't. That's pretty much the minute we decided to focus on sound and audio experience as our top priority. And looking around, we quickly understand that in order to be successful in this field, we really need to partner with a company for whom sound was second nature. And again, looking a bit more, we quickly realized that the most successful company in the sound industry, in the automotive field, was Harman. It's the house brand of brands like Harman Kardon and Infinity and Mark Levinson and AKG and JBL.
Yeah.
So we reached out to Harman and was really excited to find out that they were as excited as we were to partner. It was kind of a match, a perfect match. They would say it's a match of passions because we have the passion for the ride and they have the passion for sound. We hit it off really, really nice. Within a few months, we did an awesome job of them taking every piece of our PackTalk sound creating system, from the music processing to the equalizer to the tuning to all the way it reaches to the speaker to the hardware itself, and just made them better. So they went to their labs and turned this system into a real high-end premium sound system, the first of its kind in the motorcycle world. Now, working with them, we're allowed, we can start the riding season, offer the PackTalk series, the Bold and the Slim, with unrivaled and unmatched sound performance. And if you had a chance to hear that in our booth, you notice the difference.
Yeah.
Another great thing that we're introducing for the very first time, this is coming up with our partnership with Harman and JBL, is the notion of sound profiles. Let's say you're riding with earplugs.
I do all the time.
Yeah, some of that sound, like say the low basses may be like completely muted. You choose bass boost. That adds additional bass to compensate for your earplugs.
There you go.
If you want better perception of audio applications, voice applications such as intercom or phone conversation or just type of music which is more vocal, you switch on to vocal mode.
Are those things that you can change with the voice commands?
No, these are actually applicable through the application, through the Cardo Connect app.
Gotcha.
You just put them on and you ride. This is not just an exclusive revolution to just the 2019 PackTalk models. Actually, about 2 months later, we're planning to introduce a purchasable accessory, the same kind of speakers and matching firmware and software and tuning to all the base of PackTalks and FreeComs. So no matter if you have like a 2018 or 2016 or 2015 PackTalk or a FreeCom, which is our mid-range Bluetooth communicator.
Yeah, so I have a FreeCom 4.
Yeah.
And it works great, but as you know, when you want to listen to music, the sound quality through earplugs at 60 miles an hour is a little bit lacking. The JBL thing sounds like it'll take care of that. So you're saying I'll be able to upgrade my unit instead of having to buy a whole new unit.
Exactly. You'll buy a reasonably priced set of speakers with a software code. You'll connect the new speakers to your FreeCom, go to the app, insert the code, and you're in.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate you taking the time to tell us about the new stuff coming from Cardo.
Hey, Wes, thank you very much for having me on your show.
So every time I say we're going to play a clip while I'm talking with Scott and Liz, we just stop talking for a few seconds, and I'm going to insert the clip later, which anybody listening isn't going to notice, but I can't say, I'm thinking about this now in retrospect, I should be playing the clips because then we could talk about what just got said in the clip. But we're just going to keep moving on with this model because this is the first time I've ever done this and I didn't think it out that heavily. So what was it about Cardo that caught your attention?
The biggest thing for me was it seems like with their partnership with JBL, they're fixing all the issues I've had with Bluetooth audio, like in one big push this next time, next release. The audio quality is better. The voice command seems to work a lot better.
Yeah, that Hey Cardo thing was pretty cool.
Yeah, I know it was a controlled environment, so I'm curious to try it on the road, but to not have to mess with buttons or anything and be able to mute audio and stuff would be fantastic. One of the things that drives me nuts about Bluetooth is when I get into a weird traffic situation and I want to focus and just turn it off for a minute. It's sometimes kind of difficult to do.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, hey Cardo, stop music or whatever, and focus on what I'm doing would be great.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the voice recognition because female voices and voices with accents tend to be the more difficult the more difficult voices to have voice recognition work for. I mean, I can barely get Siri to work on my phone half the time. Siri has no idea what I'm saying. And when I was testing out the Cardo, I didn't feel like I had to overly enunciate or anything. I just said, "Hey, Cardo, music on," and boom, music was on, and it worked every single time without me having to repeat myself. So they've really taken their time to make sure it works well with male voices and with female. I don't have an accent other than the American one, so I can't vouch for that. But
yeah, I didn't think to try my best, worst Australian accent on them. I have a terrible, terrible Australian accent that I do. The only accent that I can do with any kind of credibility is like a deep, craggy Eastern European accent. And I only do that when I'm telling stories or telling a joke, so I'm not going to do it for you guys. But I honestly have to say, I'm not the most woke person in the world, but I'm a little bit woke, when it comes to gender issues and all that kind of stuff. And it literally never occurred to me before that women's voices would be different for voice recognition than men's voices. Like,
I think because we're higher pitched.
Yeah, and I gotta say, my mind is a little blown by that, and that they wouldn't think of that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Siri is a woman, so
right, exactly.
But Dan and Bruce from Cardo and JPL mentioned that was one of the things they focused on was fixing those issues so it would actually work better. I don't know if you remember when Siri first came out, there were a ton of accent issues, and then over time they made it a little bit better and a little bit better to where it's more usable now. So I'm sure it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I ever really asked Siri to do was tell me a joke, and she doesn't know any dirty jokes, so that got old pretty quick.
Yeah.
And it seems like anytime I want Siri to call somebody, "Hey Siri," or whatever, hold the button down, call mom. It doesn't really work, or
calls the wrong person.
He calls the wrong. And I noticed that one of the updates they made to that, they put a second step in there where they say, "Are you sure this is the person you want to call?" So that works pretty good. But the thing that struck me about the Cardo stuff, especially because of the JBL partnership, is that they're going to make, of course they're going to upgrade the units going forward, but they're also going to make retro kits so you can replace your speakers instead of having to buy a whole new unit.
Yeah, the replacement kit will be it's speakers, firmware, and I think a different app for your phone to control it all. But yeah, I mean they could easily phase out all the old units and force everyone to upgrade, but they're not doing that at all. They're going to offer it just as a really reasonably priced accessory that will be coming out right after the JBL release of the Pack Talk.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I mean,
I'm impressed. So,
what kind of technology stuff did you come across that caught your eye? I mean, from my perspective, the technology is in the motorcycles. That's the stuff that I was interested in. I didn't see anything except for perhaps the Helite vest, which I'm blown away by every time I see one of those. And I don't mean that there's no pun intended. Did you have a chance to stop by the Helite booth at all?
I didn't stop by the booth, but I am familiar with Helite. And it's something I've been watching. I tried on the turtle vest when it first came out. And I'm waiting for something a little less bulky, I think. But overall, I think it's a great thing. And I mean, I don't really hear many complaints. It's just with the amount of, with my Aerostitch and all the other gear I wear, it was like one more layer.
Right.
But no, I definitely think it's the way things are going to go. I'd also, I know Helite's doing some of this, but I'm looking forward to more integrated systems too. And I don't mean like the super high end ones like the, D-Air from Dainese, but it'd be nice if other brands like Helite and Hit Air got more into that.
Okay, yeah.
So, I'd like to get like an Aerostitch Roadcrafter with a built-in, inflation system. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I managed to, one of the times it just happened to be when I was going by the Helite booth. One time I got to talk to Canute, But unfortunately, my recorder was set in a bad way, and it recorded my voice very, very loud, and it recorded Canute's voice very, very soft. So I can't use that audio because I messed with it and I can't save it. But the next time I went by the booth, they were getting ready to do a demo, so I whipped out my handy-dandy iPhone and I took a video of it. And hopefully I will pay attention, and by the time this episode comes out, I will have posted that video on YouTube. It'll be on the channel for the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. So if you go into YouTube and search BMW MOA, you should get to the channel and you should be able to see the Helite video, which is really fascinating. They put it on a dude, and Canute pulled the ripcord, and you can see the guy's eyes. I don't want to say light up, but they got really big because, you know, you're supposed to wear the vest relatively snugly, and then when it triggers, that CO2 canister empties into the bladders in the vest, and it mostly expands into you to hold all your guts together so that your organs don't get rocked around in your crash. The neck of it fills up to take up the space between your shoulders and your helmet so that your neck doesn't snap. And it's really fascinating, but then you can kind of hear it in the video. Just it starts to bleed off immediately, so that, you know, if you are truly injured, you're not worried about, you're not having trouble breathing because you've got this, you know, vest that's grabbed onto you now. Which I thought was really fascinating. It's a really interesting piece of kit. I don't know how. I know a good number of people that use them, but even the cheap ones are like $700. So,
yeah, I mean, if you compare it to the price of a mid-range helmet or any other gear, it's not too far off. But I think that on the surface, it seems like something that's really expensive.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It really isn't, you know, out of price. What's the word I'm looking for? It like you said, it's comparable to a good. It kind of kills me that we say a mid-range helmet costs $700.
Yeah.
But you know, the good full-face mid-range helmets do cost $700. And you know, some other time we'll have that helmet discussion. But yeah, you know, and for somebody like me, where I'm already wearing pretty much the biggest gear that anybody makes, to put another layer on over top, like you were saying with your stitch, it's kind of inconvenient. But then again, I don't want to die, so you know, I've come off my motorcycle twice at speed, and you know, obviously I survived both times. But it would have been nice to, you know, not have whiplash. It would have been nice to, you know, not have a wrenched back. It would have been nice to, you know, not piss blood for 3 days because my back landed on a rock right next to my kidney. And, you know, that was an alarming thing to have to say to the doctor, is like, is that normal? He's like, no, but, you know, so to have another layer on, for somebody my size would be kind of inconvenient. So that's kind of my big critique of a lot of gear manufacturers, is that they don't really cater to what's a nice way to say that, the plus sized gentleman, which you'd think in the United States you would have big gear.
Yeah, you'd think this would be the market for it. And see, you kind of feel my pain trying to buy gear because there's also not a lot of catering towards the females of us.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I didn't see a lot of female-oriented gear.
Yeah, I didn't either.
There were some things in the IXS booth. I don't know if you found them. They had a little bit of an odd booth. It was kind of shielded. You had to go in it to see the stuff, which I thought was a little weird.
Yeah.
I don't remember going in that one. So yeah.
So, you know, we've talked about motorcycles and we've talked about gear. Let's talk about the show itself, because I caught a while back, you said this was your first AIMExpo. It was my It was my 5th AIMExpo. So I think we both have pretty good perspective. You as a first timer, me as a multi-timer. The only one I ever missed was the very first one that they had. And I've been to all of the other ones since. So I'd really be interested to hear you guys' kind of perception of the show in general as an event.
Yeah, I think, the scale of it was kind of amazing. I used to be a religious attendee of the IMS shows, and that was nothing compared to this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The 2 days we spent at AIMExpo was not enough.
It definitely was not enough.
Like, I'm already trying to be more tactical and stuff about how we approach next time. I did not see everything I wanted to see, and we were there pretty much all day for 2 days straight.
2 days.
Yeah, on Friday, I remember, we met up, I guess about 11 o'clock, but we'd both been there from the beginning, and then I kept seeing you all throughout the day, and I left when they turned the lights off and saw you guys ahead of me in the hallway. So the scape, that's not a word. I just mixed together scope and scale. The scale of it was, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Would you call it overwhelming?
Yes.
I would definitely say overwhelming. Definitely.
And it was funny that even though there was some non-motorcycle stuff there, like the auto cycles and, some boats and UTVs and that sort of thing, it was still like 90% motorcycle stuff was how I felt. There was so much of it. It was just incredible.
Yeah. When we met up on Friday morning, I had you guys meet me over at the motoculture area. I don't want to call it a booth because it wasn't really a booth.
Right.
Did you get to spend much time in the motoculture area?
We did. I checked out, I talked to the folks from the Vespa Club.
Yeah, they were fun.
Yeah, we also got to check out all the cool mini bikes from, is it Steady Garage? And then all the Roll and Sand stuff over there as well. And it was pretty cool. I liked it.
Yeah.
And then folks from, that you were sharing space
That's right.
with, Motorrad Angel, I believe.
Yeah, the Motorrad Angels.
That's a really, really cool initiative that they're doing, getting water filtration into communities and using motorcyclists that just happen to be traveling to those areas to do the legwork and getting those water filtration systems to those communities. I was really, really impressed with what they're doing. I think that's some really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, that was something I didn't know existed, and I'm hoping to follow up and get more information from them.
Yeah. They're really great guys. The three of them, it was Chad, who I know fairly well, a young guy called Ben, and another guy whose name I want to say is David, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm really bad with names when I don't, I met him once and talked to him a couple times and they were gone, but I think that's a really fantastic idea. I actually didn't know I thought it was just them, riding around delivering water filters. I didn't know they were using regular people. Hey, you're going to this place, take these water filters with you and drop them off. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I've got them lined up to be guests on the show. It'll probably end up being early next year before they do their big ride, which is to do all of the backcountry discovery routes in 1 month, which I think is really aggressive. If they can pull that off, we'll see. So, I actually want to talk about the motoculture a little bit myself because, it was a weird experiment. It was unlike AIMExpo has had motoculture displays or exhibits, whatever you want to call it, before, but they really did it this year in a different fashion than they have before by trying to create a kind of a flow through area where people could see some of the different aspects of motorcycling. Super obvious that it's aimed at the consumers rather than the dealers in the industry. And certainly outside of the coffee bar in the morning and the alcohol bar the rest of the day, on the industry days, the motoculture booth wasn't super populated. On consumer days, it was mobbed. There were people everywhere. All day long, both Saturday and Sunday. It was fantastic to see that. And of course, the Motorrad Angels were there using the space for the MOA, and they had a little campsite set up. They did a fantastic job. They had a little campfire and a tent. It was I don't want to say cute, but it was cute.
It was.
A couple of GSs were there, and then all the guys with the Groms, the Grom. I don't want to say Grom Squad. I want to get it right. Grom Goonies, something like that from California.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with Josh Rogers, the president of the Vespa Club. I'm going to play that clip right here.
So now I'm hanging out in the motoculture area at the Vespa Club of America section, and I'm here with Josh Rogers, who is the Vespa Club of America president. And Josh, tell me a little bit about the Vespa Club of America in general.
Yeah, the Vespa Club of America was founded in '93, and its current iteration. We're really a group dedicated to like-minded people who like Vespa, and that's the short of it. I would like to think now at this point we're more of a historical society, as well as just ambassadors for the community. Vespas are still being made. They still have beautiful design. And whether you like the old ones or the new ones, we all have something in common.
And what do you like, old or new?
I prefer the old ones, yeah.
So what's your main rider? If you go in the garage on Saturday morning to pick out a scooter to ride, which one are you grabbing?
It's my 1981 Vespa P200.
Okay, and 200 is at the engine displacement?
Close, it's 198.
That's close enough. Motorcycles do the same thing.
I know, isn't that funny?
So what's for... I've never ridden a scooter. I've ridden some small motorcycles, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So for somebody like me who's used to motorcycles, what's the experience of riding a Vespa like?
Yeah, it's interesting because I ride both. I started on Vespas. Then I became a motorcycle safety instructor, and I was riding a lot of different motorcycles all the time. And now I have like one of the bikes in my corral is a 65 BSA. So
Excellent choice.
The stuff is on the opposite sides, right?
Yeah.
And I can pretty much get on anything and ride it. And so I think that for me, what I love and why I choose the Vespas on most rides, they handle way better. They're light. They're fun. It's kind of like you're riding on air, right? Compared to like my Triumph or my BSA, which are these heavy, hoggy,
a little more
things,
work,
right? But the small wheel in the front, even modern scooters, the biggest wheel they have in the front is a 12-inch wheel. And if you go, lock to lock, they can turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to lean them. And they're just a lot of fun.
So if somebody's interested in getting into riding Vespas, where's a good place for a modern rider to start? Should they look at an old bike or a new bike, or does it kind of depend on their kind of aesthetic choices?
I think it really depends on how mechanically inclined they want to be or are. If you're not mechanically inclined, you should stay away from the vintage stuff because it's old. They stopped importing Vespas in 1980, 81, and all that stuff is old and fickle. The new stuff, you turn the key, you press the button, and it starts, and it goes, and it doesn't stop. Right?
And you don't have to think about it.
You don't have to think about it.
So kind of the same for whether you get a vintage bike or a motorcycle or a new motorcycle. If you're mechanically inclined, go ahead and get that 50-year-old bike and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
If all you want to do is twist and go, get something with all the main modern technology.
Yeah, when you say modern technologies, the old ones, as well as they would stop, now they have ABS and disc brakes and these kinds of things, and they stop a lot faster.
There you go.
Yeah.
So where can people go to find out more about the Vespa Club?
VespaClubofAmerica.com.
That is so easy.
It's very easy.
All right, thanks a lot, Josh.
Yeah,
man,
thanks,
I appreciate
Wes.
it.
Josh was a fascinating guy to talk to, mostly because they just had their big annual rally in Richmond, the city that I live really close to. So I went out one day and visited with Vespa riders, scooter riders. It wasn't just Vespa riders. And I had no idea that there was this big Vespa club. But, actually, I want to ask you a couple of cultural questions. Two things. So I kind of get the appeal of having a bar available to people where you can, buy beer and mixed drinks and stuff like that. But as far as promoting alcohol consumption as part of motoculture. I'm not sure how I felt about that, because I have really strong feelings about drinking and riding.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, a lot of people, especially on industry days, were staying in the Mandalay Bay, which is where the convention center was. It's part of the big resort there. So they weren't drinking and riding. But a lot of people on consumer days rode to the show and, had a few drinks and then had to get back home, and they brought their motorcycles.
Maybe rode it on a demo as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Come in, have a couple of beers, go for a demo ride. You would hope that they were paying attention to that.
Yeah.
So I really was excited about the motoculture area, even that they had people doing tattoos there, like real tattoo artists doing real tattoos, not, temporary tattoos. That was very cool to see. And definitely tattoos are a part of biker culture, but is drinking enough of a part of biker culture to promote it at an event like AIMExpo? I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I personally, I don't know really how I feel about that. I'm definitely if I drink anything, it's after I'm done riding for the day person, like nothing at all during the day. If I'm on the bike. So yeah, I don't know. I felt like it maybe sent the wrong impression a little bit, but also it was Las Vegas.
Right.
And a lot of people at the show probably didn't ride there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that myself. I did like the motoculture area as a whole, though.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, I don't know about the drinking aspect.
Yeah, I'm still torn as well. I ride to work every day, and some days we have a happy hour after work, and everybody knows to have a soda or some water for Liz because she's on a motorcycle.
Right.
That's me too. So.
But again, it was Vegas, and maybe it was just kind of trying to pull in some of the Vegas vibe. I don't know. I wish that people were more grown up, but I don't know. It's a really tough call.
Yeah, because the other thing is you see a lot of breweries and stuff sponsoring races and other bike events too. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it was any different than that or not.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on that. And, I will say that AIMExpo in Vegas was the first time I ever tried a Moscow Mule. And I actually enjoyed it. And I came home and got myself some ginger beer so I can make my own Moscow Mules.
Nice.
Very exciting. My wife, not a big fan. She didn't really like them. They were a little too aggressive for her. But I was just curious, and I'm curious about another thing. And I hesitated to bring this up, but I figure we're in deep. We might as well hit it. So last year, for sure, and possibly the year before, the folks from Hell Performance had more or less the same booth that they had this year. Now, Hell Performance makes stainless steel braided brake lines and some other parts for motorcycles, high-end parts. I've actually put Hell brake lines on motorcycles, not my own motorcycles, but motorcycles belonging to friends that they make kits for. High-quality stuff. It's really good kit, no doubt about that. But they had a stripper pole in their booth.
Right.
Now I'm not gonna make any judgments or assumptions and say that the woman using the stripper pole was actually a stripper, but she did kind of present as a stripper.
She may have been playing the role of a stripper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was, let's say, tastefully covered. She was not inappropriately dressed in any way, although she wore some revealing and very tight outfits. Not that I looked every single time, but you can't hardly miss it with the music and the. But I thought that I got to say this, and I don't want to say it's not a slam at the folks at Hell Performance, because it is kind of a slam at the folks at Hell Performance, even though they do make a good product. I really did want to see a stripper booth, a stripper pole at the AIMExpo. I thought it was hugely inappropriate.
Yes.
Especially in, kind of the Me Too era. And I know that I'm probably going to catch some flack over even bringing up something that's as emotionally charged as that. But in a day and age where we as a society are paying so much more attention to women's issues in general and trying to attract more women to motorcycling,
yes,
I think it was a really poor choice.
Yeah, and I mean, I just thought with it as an industry, we were past that. And I noticed that they were pretty much the only booth in the entire show that was that way.
Yeah.
You know, it was so out of place, like everybody was talking about it, which was probably part of their goal. But
it worked.
Yeah, but, I guess bad press is still press. But,
Yeah, and here we are talking about it, and even I'm trying to qualify my criticism by saying they make good products, which they do.
Yeah.
But that's something that I noticed though, is that there were some, I don't really know what, for lack of a better term, there were some booth girls around, think, statuesque, good looking women, wearing extremely tight clothing, designed to attract attention. But most of the women working at most of the booths were wearing, regular clothes just like everybody else. They had on a brand T-shirt, a Yamaha T-shirt, or a Suzuki T-shirt, or whatever shirt, regular pants, shoes, like a normal person would when they're standing on concrete for 4 days in a row.
Exactly.
So the Hell booth really stood out, and maybe that was their whole intention, was to kind of be the politically incorrect booth in the room.
Yeah, that might have been their intention. And, I've been riding motorcycles for 11 years, and I still get does your husband know that you took his bike out for a ride? Whatever.
Seriously?
And I roll my eyes. Seriously, it happens more often than you would think. But, for me, I've always joked that, hey, I'd be way more okay with booth babes and scantily clad ladies if there was equal time. We had some really attractive, scantily clad men sashaying around. It's equal time. It's objectifying on both sides. And because of that, it probably shouldn't be there. I think we should be more open and inclusive of all these different people that we want to bring into the sport. I kind of wish, in retrospect, that I had gone up to Hell and said, as a female motorcyclist, I'm not really sure I'm feeling this message that you're sending out to me, who rides my own bike and isn't riding on the back. If they're there next year, I might have to do that.
Yeah,
Get a little investigative journalistic on them or something. I don't know.
Well, what really summed it up for me with the Hell booth was I didn't go over to the booth and look at any of their products or talk to them at all or anything just because of the booth. So
100%, exactly.
Yeah, it's they may have been playing the whole bad press is good press game and stuff, but I'm sure a lot of people didn't even walk over to it. So
I literally did not even know what kind of stuff they were marketing until you just now mentioned it. I had no idea.
I wonder how many other people were in that same position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just felt like AIMExpo is a little more professional than that, I think.
Well, I guess we'll see next year when they go back to Columbus, when we all go back to Columbus, what happens. So anyways, to kind of get back to, AIMExpo, the show itself, it was much bigger of a venue than they've been in before. The facility in Orlando is large, but I would say it's probably maybe 3/4 the size of the space that we had in Vegas. The Columbus Convention Center was maybe 2/3 of the area. So one of the functions of that I noticed was, even though there were lots of people in there, and there were times where booths were quite full of people, you could walk around very easily. The aisles in between, kind of sections were roomy. It didn't feel crowded like you were on top of other people all the time. Columbus felt very crowded, which, has its own vibe. The IMS comes to places that are much smaller, and the IMS usually feels pretty crowded, especially, from opening to like 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday. It feels really crowded. And that's kind of exciting and kind of, it builds the hype. But being able to move around so easily in Vegas was kind of a welcome change. And I'll be interested to see how they manage the traffic flow in Columbus next year now that they've done it in a place that was so big.
Yeah. It's funny because I thought we attended one of the consumer days and I thought it felt kind of dead because I was expecting to be crowded until I realized, no, it's just so big that everyone's spread out and there's actually a lot of people in there.
Yeah. It was a lot of people on Saturday and Sunday morning. You guys were gone, I think, by Sunday. Sunday was really well attended as well.
Good.
And that's I kind of gauged it by the motoculture booth. Most of the day Sunday there weren't a lot of empty chairs in the motoculture area. So that kind of tells me there were a good amount of people there. So let me ask you another thing. Since you guys were first timers, what was your experience as part of the media and attending? How did you feel like the process was to be a media person, to get credentials, to attend? What do you feel like that AIMExpo as an entity kind of did well or could have improved on as far as the media is concerned?
I like that they're really open to new media stuff. So, blogging, vlogging, podcasting and that, whereas I think other industry things maybe aren't so open to it. They seem to kind of be embracing internet media specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And I mean, that was great. For other events, I probably wouldn't even bother trying to apply necessarily, just knowing I'd probably be turned down.
Yeah. So
we were a little worried at first that, okay, well, we've applied, we've been accepted, but we don't have letterhead. We don't have a boss that can vouch for us. We don't have any of that.
I get good traffic, but it's not as good as, say, Cycle World or something like that, Right.
And then we picked up our badges. They're like, here you go. And we're like, wow, that was really easy.
Yeah, the very first year that I went was 2014. And on the website, on the AIMExpo, it's AIMExpoUSA.com. On that website, they had a kind of a list of rules for media that started with no shorts, and we'd like you to wear like khakis. I think they discouraged people from wearing jeans. Now they've relaxed that quite a bit, which I think is interesting.
There was a lot of walking back and forth and back and forth, and by the end of the day, up and down taking pictures. Oh my goodness, I felt like I had hiked for like miles, and I did. I had hiked for miles, literally.
Yeah, you definitely, if anybody, and this goes for anybody that goes to AIMExpo, whether you're there for one day or multiple days, wear sturdy, comfortable shoes because you are going to need them. And, maybe spring for the foot massage when you get home.
If you ride there, bring a change of shoes because you're not going to want to walk around all day in your riding boots.
No, definitely not.
Oh, man. Especially if you're like a hardcore adventure rider and you got those those off-road boots, man. Whew, that would be rough. So now I had forgotten when we were talking about helmets to bring up the helmet that I wanted to mention. So I'm going to jump back to that. And then we're going to do one more thing, and then we're going to wrap up. So you guys talked about Bell and DeVita, and the helmet that I was excited to find out was in attendance. They're going to be imported by Pacific Power Sports. Is the Voz helmet, the VOZZ, out of Australia. Now, I had a chance to talk with Johnny Vazzo, the guy that invented the helmet. So I'm going to play that clip right now, and then we'll come back and talk about the Voz helmets a little bit.
I found the Pacific Power Sports booth. They are the U.S. distributor for brand new, well, not brand new, but new to the U.S., Voz helmets. And I'm here with
Johnny Vazzo, the inventor of Voz helmets.
There you go. So tell me about what I think is the weirdest looking yet most interesting helmet in the building.
Yeah, you're probably right, but it's the most advanced technology helmet in the world for the most comfort and quietest helmet on the market, and I'll explain to you why. Voss helmets changes the way you apply and remove the helmet.
Right.
By basically what we do, we cut the helmet in half and allow you to enter from the rear. Since you can enter from the rear, it gives this helmet technology above and behold better application removable properties compared to any other helmet on the market today, and I'll explain to you why. Since you can enter from the rear, we're able to reduce the bell size hole. So, if you can't put the helmet on, you can't take it off.
Right.
Within doing that, we also curve the bell edge, so it's right under. What normally happens on people riding bikes, the wind hits the chin bar and wants to lift off the top of your head.
Yep.
This has a contoured flow where the air flows around it and doesn't want to lift off your head. It stays static on your head up to 90%. We call it DVS, Directional Visor Stability, because it's that static on your head. Also, we eliminate the chin strap altogether.
No chin strap at all.
No chin strap. You're thinking, wow, how does it stay in your head? With all those features in the small and the contoured shape, it doesn't come off your head. Also, we give you an adjustable chin cup. With the adjustable chin cup, you can bring it out, in and out by 10 or 15 mil, which actually locks the helmet to your head and retains the chin and stops the helmet from shifting and buffeting at high speeds. This technology you can put on and off in seconds with gloves and glasses. It is certified DOT, ECE, ANZ at the moment, and it's fast becoming the most popular helmet in the world purely because of its application and removal properties and its quietness while you're riding it as we speak.
So have you done studies like decibel levels compared to other?
We haven't done that many studies. In Australia, it's the most popular helmet. We let the public come back with their requirements and posts, and basically anyone who's got a Voss at the moment, they love it purely because they can put it on and off in seconds, and it is the most comfortable helmet they've ever worn. And it comes from people who've been riding bikes for over 20 years. You can see the safety in helmets now, and you can understand the quality and the application process, what Voss is literally for worldwide usage.
And so for consumers in the United States that want to buy one, what's it going to set them back?
At the moment, the technology sells for $6.99 retail off the shelf, but what you get for $6.99 is a good quality product, which you actually get a good quality bag, a spare extra visor which is tinted, and another set of adjusting blocks, so that way in case they strip, you can replace that big technology. Why the adjusting blocks? What normally happens with people when they get a Voss, people love it, and what they normally do, they want to try it, they want to readjust it, and they will try and get it to fit their head. Everyone knows who's got their own helmet, or personally knows a helmet is customised to their own personal fit. Mm-hmm. And this way, every time they try and change it, it can strip the screws. Once you set your retention system, you can forget it and never have to set it again unless you choose to.
There you go. Well, thanks a lot, Johnny. I appreciate it.
No worries. Looking forward to speaking to you again if possible. If not, I'll see you in the future, and hopefully these Voss helmets will save lives.
Oh, and before, what's the website people can go to learn more about the Voss helmet?
The website is www.vosshelmets.com, and just before I let you go, another thing this technology can also do is remove in emergency conditions if you choose to.
Okay.
Since you might be left in a situation where the person might be still and not moving, on the side of the helmet has a QR code which you can scan, where basically it takes you to the website and shows you how to separate the helmet if you choose to. That way you can probably save someone's life.
There you go. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Have a good day, Wes.
For anybody that's never seen or heard of the Voss helmet, it's kind of like a reverse flip front helmet, but not exactly. So it's a clamshell helmet that hinges, so it opens and you put it on, and then you close it once it's on your head. But instead of opening in the front like a traditional flip front helmet, it opens in the back, and you kind of roll it onto your head, and then you close the back. It doesn't have a chin strap. What it has is a cup on the inside that you push your chin into, and then when you close the helmet, that chin cup secures it to your head. You can't put the helmet on. If it's closed, you can't pull it down over your head. If it's on and it's closed, you can't pull it off over your head. It rolls under your neck, under your jawline, so that it's not going to come off. And it's helmet technology has not really advanced in leaps and bounds. They make these little minor changes in materials, in fabrics, in kind of construction methods. You guys mentioned the MIPS system that Bell uses in some of their helmets,
Right.
which is interesting. It's not a huge technological leap forward, and other than its method of entry and exit, the Vaz helmet doesn't look like it's a huge technological step forward. And maybe it's not. We could probably argue that. I'm sure that Johnny, who was a fantastic person to talk to, would have some opinions on that. But what I really dig about the Vaz helmet is somebody is thinking differently about protecting the heads of motorcycle riders. And that, more than anything else, fascinates me. More than the mechanism, more than the features. It's just that somebody said, I think I can do this better, which we don't really see a lot of in the motorcycle helmet industry. So did you guys get a chance to see the Vaz helmets at all?
I just looked at the display. I didn't have a chance to chat with them about them. I know a little bit about them just because they've been trying to come to market for a few years, I think.
Yes, they have.
A while ago. But yeah, I find it fascinating too. It's just because everybody else seems to stick to the same basic format with just minor differences, whereas this is a completely different way of thinking about it. I will say it does seem a little claustrophobic to me. I haven't tried one on, but something about it, I don't know.
Yeah, did you get a chance to try one on? I'd love to hear about it if you did.
I did try one on. I used their largest one, which is a 2X. And claustrophobic might be the right word. It's weird to put on because you kind of open it and roll it onto your face, and then kind of push it back into place and close the back of it. But I've got a big bushy beard, so my chin didn't fit into the chin cup very well.
Oh no!
Yeah, so I had a hard time closing it. But I was able to get it closed, and I could probably wear one. I don't know how comfortable it would be unless I, did a reverse goatee and shaved down the middle of my chin.
They put it right in Portland, just
yeah. But from that perspective, one of the big reasons I'm not a fan of flip front helmets is because when I close them, it catches my beard hair in the latches, and that's very painful.
That would hurt.
And with the Vaz, here was a helmet that opens that I can wear without ripping out my beard hair.
Yeah.
So I was kind of intrigued, and I remember seeing a news article on them a couple of years ago, and a couple of videos, and thought, what a really interesting idea. I really hope that catches on in the United States and that they sell a bunch of units, because Johnny is a skydiver, and here he is inventing a motorcycle helmet in a way that nobody has ever really done. So
yeah, they're kind of cool. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to try one on, and I'd be a little concerned that I'd forget how to get out of it and have that panic of, oh no, what do I do? How do I get out? I'm stuck.
Yeah.
But they're really cool. I'm gonna have to try one on, I think, at some point, just to experience it.
Yeah, and one of the really cool things about it is, let's say that something's gone wrong, you've crashed, and you're lying on the ground, maybe even unconscious. An emergency, a paramedic, a EMT, a first responder, whatever, they can open the helmet and lift the front of it without moving your head or neck at all.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So because that back place, let's say the back of your head is on the ground, right? Your helmet's on the ground. That, keeps you in place, and you can just open it right up. And then, when you're done, if you need to, you can close it. Or if you need to get them out of it, now you've got the hard part is open, and the back part, you just slide it right off.
Right out.
It's way easier from an emergency standpoint to get out of than a traditional flip front helmet. That's for absolute sure. So I'm going to play one more. I'm going to play another clip, this time from from a man that I met just walking around the floor, who's a local Las Vegan. I don't know, but he'll introduce himself, and you can hear that, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up a little bit.
And I'm here talking to you, sir.
Mr. Q.
Mr. Q. And
Yes,
are
sir.
you from Vegas? Or
Yes.
you from
I've been here 22 years.
22 years? What do you ride?
I ride a 2011 Road Glide.
2011 Road Glide. So I'm assuming you've been to the Harley booth.
Right.
Do you see anything there that you're thinking maybe
we
might
went-
replace your Road Glide?
No, I'm going to keep. I just left Red Rock Harley-Davidson. They had an event over there.
Okay.
And I didn't see nothing that I like. But if I did, I would just upgrade my bike to the existing parts that they have on there. That Milwaukee 8 is what they're pushing on that, but Indian is coming up.
Yeah, Indian's coming up. I'm a big fan.
That new Indian they got is beautiful. So with that 116 in it, but we didn't see no prices. But Harley's is starting to go back up on their prices on their motorcycles. It's insane.
So outside of the Indians, what else have you seen around the show?
We just getting started.
Just getting started. Good. So if you're looking at bikes, we're always looking at other things, parts, gear,
Right,
that kind of stuff.
accessories, right.
What's your next thing that you're looking to buy to make your riding experience better?
I'm always looking for tires.
Tires,
I look at
gotcha.
the tires. Right now, I ride white walls on mine, and most of the tires I'm getting, they start to turn brown instead of staying white.
You know, I never thought of that. I don't use white walls,
Yeah,
so
I like
that
white walls.
not something that I would have thought about. How do you keep them clean?
You're right. The rear tires, no problem. It seems like we're having problems with the front tire.
Is it brake dust?
I don't know what it is. We can't figure it out. You know, we cleaned it. It's like, wow, what is? I just saw Indian. He had his on there, and I said, man, yours got the same thing on it. But I guess when you're looking at a tire in a magazine, it hasn't been written, so you're like, wow, that's got a
Shiny.
clean white. Right. As soon as you put it on the bike, 2 weeks later, something like, what the hell is this? And then you got to try to find cleaning products.
Right.
So if they had a good cleaning product, I guess it wouldn't be too bad. So maybe that's where I'm going wrong at looking at a white wall, but when I need to actually be looking at the cleaning product.
Well, good luck with that. I'm not much help there. I kind of just lubricate my chain and get on with my life.
Yeah, so you got a chain on yours, huh?
Yeah, on one of them. Yeah, I got a couple different bikes. Well, Mr. Q, it's nice to meet you.
Sir.
Thanks for taking a
All
few
right,
moments. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, I hope that everybody has enjoyed our little experiment in conversation here, discussion, co-hosting, whatever you want to call it, with Scott Correy and Liz Howe. For people that are listening to this episode and have met you guys for the very first time, where can they find you on the internet?
I'm at only2wheels.com.
And I am at one girl, one bike, one world.com. One spelled out as the number ONE.
ONE. Every time it's not, you don't mix them up.
I don't mix them up.
All right, cool. And of course, everybody knows they can find Chasing the Horizon at chasingthehorizon.us. I don't have to tell you that. So after the end of the conversation, we're going to have our Dunlop spot and the traditional wrap up that goes on. But Scott and Liz, I want to thank you guys for coming on and talking about your experience at AIMExpo. I'm looking forward to seeing you next year at AIMExpo, and hopefully we can do something like this again in the future.
Sounds good. I had a good time, and yeah, we'll definitely be at the next AIMExpo.
Definitely. Thanks for inviting us on. It's been great. I've had a really good time.
Chasing the Horizon is brought to you in Season 2 by Dunlop Motorcycle Tires. Motorcyclists the world over recognize the name Dunlop, and for good reason. With extensive global resources and a commitment to racing disciplines worldwide, Dunlop draws on a vast body of knowledge to develop innovative motorcycle tire technology. Much of this technology quickly makes its way to motorcycle riders, whether they ride on the track, street, or a weekend off-road adventure. Dunlop maintains extensive development and manufacturing capabilities in the U.S., focused on developing groundbreaking new products. Dunlop has been building tires using domestic and foreign materials in Buffalo, New York since 1920, and to this day is the largest manufacturer building motorcycle tires in the USA. Point your web browser to DunlopMotorcycleTires.com to learn more about Dunlop's promotions, find the right tires for your bike, and use a searchable index of hundreds of Dunlop motorcycle tire dealers across North America. Please take some time to engage with us on the internet. Chasing the Horizon is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and of course you can visit the website at chasingthehorizon.us for show notes and links for all the sponsors, news items, and guests. There's a mailing list with exclusive content and giveaways open only to subscribers. You can sign up for that at tinyletter.com/chasingthehorizon. Thank you for coming back for the 36th episode of Chasing the Horizon. There's a bonus episode available containing more brief conversations with random folks from around AIMExpo. Episode 37 will feature a discussion with Fred Howe and will be out on November 12th. Thanks for listening. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road. Or off it. Ride safe.